Identify yourself.
The things that DTE, Linda Kurtz, I am head of the Smart Meter Education Network. We have about 2,200 members across the state of Michigan. I have not been up here before because I am extremely electrosensitive. So it is an effort to be here, but one that I think is worth it today. I will be, yeah, this thing kind of bothers me a little bit. The things that DTE brought up, I will be addressing in my talk, so I hope that you will bear with me. I have received literally thousands of calls over the last 6 years that I have been working on this issue. I have more contacts about this issue than anyone in the state, and so I really can address the things that they brought up. I don't even know that there is going to be enough time, but if you bear with me, what is in here is going to address just about every point.
Now, Ms. Kurtz, let me be clear on two things. We have 35 minutes left, so I want to make sure you're not saying your testimony might take longer than 35 minutes.
It will not take longer than 35.
Let's give you until the top of the hour about 8 minutes.
Okay, I had understood that, and Brock had talked with you about this, I was going to get 15 to 20 minutes.
He asked for 10.
Well,
so why don't you proceed? Let's quit debating how much time and you proceed.
Okay. Boy. All right. First of all, analog meter opt-outs are in many states mandatory: California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, etc. They have a 43-year depreciable life. That is according to DTE Energy. That is a depreciable life. This is going to be really extremely difficult for me to do now. The day after Labor Day 2016, David Redmond of Sumter Township was shut off without notice by DTE. He awoke gasping for air because he is on a breathing machine. He had received no notice from DTE about the shutoff. After shutting him off, DTE left a notice on his door stating that a lock on his meter was a safety hazard. Now, the committee has gotten testimony from a number of fire department chiefs. That information has also been presented to the Michigan Public Service Commission in some of its hearings. I have spoken with a volunteer firefighter. Other members of the Smart Meter Education Network have spoken with their fire department representatives, fire chiefs. These people have said that a locking device, an enclosure, whatever it might be on a meter, hit the next button, on the meter is not an issue. And I can provide documentation for that. In fact, the last time that DTE pried off one of these, and I don't know what pictures DTE gave you to look at, but the last time that DTE pried off a so-called tater guard, which is a piece that goes over part of the meter housing, was in mid-December of this year in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Now, there may be other cases. That is the last one I know of. They have pried them off. They have cut them off. First responders have told us that they can very easily access the meter and get it off. So I don't think that that is, in fact, an issue. Now, moving on, in the summer of 1999 next. Yep. Greg Burgess had a pool put in. He called DTE to find out whether he might install a plexiglass cover near the pool for safety reasons. DTE told him that installing the cover was a good safety measure, and for 18 years, DTE had no issue with the cover. On the 26th of June 2017, DTE shut off Mr. Burgess's electricity. He did not receive any notice. He was told by the letter they left on his door that his service had been shut off because he had a locking device on his meter. Mr. Burgess had no locking device, only the plexiglass cover that DTE had approved in 1999. Mr. Burgess had not received any communication, later found that DTE had sent a letter to an address that was not his service address, not the address at which he received his bills or anything else. At the time DTE was shutting off his electricity, he was preparing to make a bid on a property. He was willing to bid up to $50,000. He got home to no electricity. He couldn't make the bid. He lost the property, which sold for under $50,000. He lost the food in his fridge and his freezer because DTE refused to restore power in a timely manner as required by law. It was over 5 days. He was not shut off for a locked meter. He had a device on his home that DTE itself had approved. He called DTE constantly. It was 5 days until they restored his electricity. His case is not unique in any way, just illustrative of many of them that are there. And I want to emphasize, Mr. Burgess had no particular interest in the smart meter issue. He contacted me after DTE shut him off. And that has happened many, many, many times. We're getting a lot more members because of these shutoffs. Next. And that's Mr. Burgess and his partner. And they now actually, interestingly, their ears ring constantly in their home since the installation of a smart meter. Again, this is a man who had no interest in the smart meter issue. Well, DTE's tactic, my impression, and I can provide supporting evidence for this, but my impression is that DTE did not want to shut off customers, let it be known that it was shutting off customers for refusal of a smart meter. And so what they began doing in March of 2015 was sending out a letter that said that the customer needed to respond to them because of a locking device on their meter. That was the term that they used, locking device. Now, for years, decades, even a century, DTE had had no issues with locks, big locks on meters. For example, Gail Travis had kept the meters at his house and his auto detailing business locked for over 15 years. DTE had never taken issue with the locks. Suddenly, in June 2016, DTE shut off his electricity because his meter was locked. Mr. Burgess, Mr. Travis had no particular interest in the smart meter issue and only contacted us after his meter had been shut off. His and his wife's informal complaint to the Michigan Public Service Commission was not even dealt with. He was shut off. This has also happened to many people. You got that one? Okay. So the letter that is being sent, and continues actually to be sent out by DTE. DTE is sending out multiple different kinds of letters at this point, is nothing more than a pretext to force installation of the smart meter. The text of the letter itself makes this clear, stating your electric service will be disconnected on or after date if you do not remove the locking device and contact us immediately so that we can proceed with the installation of the smart meter. The letter doesn't say so that you and your neighbors are safe. Now, DTE says the letter is being sent out because the locking device is a condition that is unsafe for your family and your neighbors. If that were the case, the letter would say, please remove it so that we can proceed with, so that you and your neighbors are safe. That's not what it says. Christina Fortis, head of the Michigan Agency for Energy's Complaint Division, told me plainly that the intent of this letter is to get smart meters installed on the customer's house. We had a very long conversation. When Ms. Fortis was questioned as to why this pretext of claiming that the lock is a safety hazard was being used, Ms. Fortis replied, I'm not their marketing person. Ms. Fortis said that the commission had approved the letter, but that she was unable to provide me with any documentation of that approval. I was also told that the winter protection plan did not. I was told this by Ms. Fortis, and it's also been at some of the MPSC hearings. The winter protection plan does not cover shutoffs except in cases of non-payment. So if you're old and you can't have a smart meter on your home, you can get shut off. If you're old and you can't pay your bill, you can't. DTE was up here testifying that no senior citizens have been shut off in the winter for refusal of an AMI meter. That is incorrect. One case, and I can supply many others, is Ellen Nelson, 78 years old, cut off December of 2016, for over a week. It was absolutely frigid at that time of year. And as I said, DTE for quite a few years was simply cutting or prying both locks and locking devices off meter housings, and the last time I am aware of them doing that was December 2017. Yep.
Need you to wrap up, please.
Okay. Okay, move on to the number of, so DTE began sending shut-off notices. Often people didn't even know it was a shut-off notice because there was a letter. In fact, I got one of those, and the only reason I knew it was a shut-off notice was because people had contacted me. The shut-off notice was on the back of the letter. And I actually didn't even think that I had actually gotten a shut-off notice, just a letter. And it was on the floor, and my cat flipped it over, and all of a sudden there was a shut-off letter in front of my face. Some people didn't even see that shut-off notice. Next. So here is testimony that DTE just submitted to the Michigan Public Service Commission. They say that they have shut off 478 customers in October and November of 2017 for refusing to accept a smart meter. And you will notice that in December of 2017, they say they have shut off an additional 20, again, in contrast to what DTE just presented up here. There's a lot that I could say about additional proof showing what they're trying to do. I will skip that. Two other things that I would like to say briefly. One is that over and over again, the question is being asked, why isn't the opt-out that DTE offers sufficient? It's very simple. Digital meters, whether they are smart meters with the radio frequency on, smart meters with the radio frequency off, or the non-transmitting meters, no RF in them at all, that Consumers Energy offers, generate voltage transients, commonly called dirty electricity. These voltage transients have been shown, and I can provide you with the scientific papers on that, to harm human health. So for someone like me and many other people, this is very simply a question about wanting and needing to be safe in our own homes. I would not be up here if DTE wanted to put a digital meter on my home that did not generate voltage transients. I would not be spending my time in Lansing. I would not be spending most of my free time working on this issue. We're asking for an analog opt-out. It's offered in quite a few states across this country of ours.
Thank you, Ms. Kurtz. Representative Lauer has a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You kind of got to the question a little bit, and it was about why was the opt-out meter not sufficient. I guess for a lot of us, what we don't understand is how is that not different from a different electronic device in your home, such as a television, a radio, clock radio, things of that nature? Like, why is this particular device creating this dirty energy, as you called it, and how do you know that? Like, how do you how have you come to those conclusions is what I'm curious to learn.
Okay, so what happens is that the meter has what's called a switched mode power supply in it. And that's something that you can see actually there. The 240 volts coming down from the power line has to be stepped down to about 4 to 10 volts to run the electronics in the meter. Otherwise, the meter gets fried out. It's a computer. And then the electricity has to be stepped up again to 240 or 120 volts in order to run, you know, the equipment in your home. So the process of stepping the electricity down and stepping it back up generates the voltage transients, the dirty electricity. What happens is that you, next picture, you have, oh, don't have it, previous one. What you have normally is a smooth wave going through your home every second, 60 hertz. The transients ride on that, and what they do is they radiate out into the room. Their electromagnetic field, they're coming out in millisecond bursts. It's like static. For people like me, my health is greatly affected. Other people, their health is affected they don't know what's going on. So particularly people who get high blood pressure, high blood sugar problems, that's something that they're just not associating with the meter. And so I'm losing my track of answering your question now, so.
I guess what I don't understand is most of our appliances in our house, you know, it's
Oh, right, that was
110
the
volts,
part.
you plug them
Yeah.
in, it steps it down to however many amps it's going to use or volts. Like my cell phone here, the charger has to step that power down to make it acceptable so it doesn't blow up my phone. So that process happens throughout the home. So I guess what I'm not clear on is how is this different and how is it causing the issue with
Sure.
the smart meter, but somehow it's not a problem for my television, for
Sure.
example, that's
Okay.
plugged in and it's got to step it down for that too.
I got
It's
you.
the same
I got
exact
you.
situation.
It's in general not as great of a problem with something like plugging your cell phone charger in or running CFLs. It is still a problem. It still generates dirty electricity. It generates it on that circuit that you have. So if your cell phone is plugged into circuit number 1 and your kitchen appliances aren't anything that generates dirty electricity, and they're on circuit number 2, that circuit is as clean as it can be given the fact that you probably have a smart meter. What's happening with a smart meter is that the electricity coming in is being contaminated essentially at the source, at the point of entry into your home, and so every circuit becomes contaminated. Now, there's different kind of metering equipment that you can use to measure the dirty electricity, ranging from oscilloscopes, which, cost $10,000 and none of us own, down to some fairly simple devices that give you a good picture. So DTE put a smart meter on my home, September of 2015, unbeknownst to me, quite a surprise. I walked into my house not knowing it was on, and everything in my neck started clamping, pressure down into my head, then my shoulders started to clamp. I went down, I shut off the circuit breakers, I went outside, there was a smart meter. Now, prior to that, I use a laptop, everything is hardwired, no wireless. Does that create some issues for me? Yes, it does create some issues for me. I can tolerate it, okay? If
Ms.
I
Kurtz,
don't
I
do
want
it.
you to wrap up. You've
Yep.
now had 22 minutes.
Okay, I was trying to answer his question.
Got you. I understand. Anything further, Representative Lauer?
No, thank you.
Okay.